Now, we've been talking about the porcelain dolls, commonly known by collectors in the old days as China dolls. But it's a use of porcelain, which bisque dolls are basically porcelain as well. But these are porcelain dolls with a glazed finish on them, so they maintain their shiny complexion, and in many, many of the early cases, a very white complexion. We looked at some that had the sculpted hair as well. But then the French decided, it evolved into making the French poupée. And the early French poupées were made of porcelain by Hooray, by Romer, by others, by Blampois. And you see different complexions. And we have 3 of them here. And you can see how we have a very, very white, and then a little not quite so white, and then the rose tinted, which became to be a technique that was developed to give it a less statue-like quality, let me put it that way, a more human quality to it with the tinting of the complexion. And very, very beautifully done. Cobalt eyes, and I always tell collectors, look for cobalt eyes in the fashion dolls because it really is a kind of a giveaway to you of the age of the dolls. Beyond 1865, 1867, or 68, you see very, very few of the use of the cobalt eyes anymore. There was a particular year that the cobalt was outlawed because it was known that the people who worked with making the eyes with cobalt wasn't healthy, let's put it that way. So these gorgeous eyes that we have here today are at the cost to the people who made them, but are beautiful for us to look at today. And I have 3 beautiful examples of porcelain dolls. I love this little girl because I love these tiny porcelain dolls and the tiny poupée dolls. They're so rare to find. And this one has just a near mint body. It's so perfect. She's wearing this wonderful white piqué dress with little polka dots on it. And she comes in her own little wooden box, and she has other costumes. She has a scarf. Look at this wonderful little hat she has. Here's the sleeves. Now, isn't this a great invention? We should have these today, where you could just buy sleeves, and then you don't have to wash the whole blouse. You just take the sleeves off, and you use them interchangeably. If you wanted to have sleeves on your dress, for example, you tuck it under there, and you would have sleeves. We have the little apron. Oh, I love this. I love the use of linen. And here's a little pinafore with the banding around the sides, which is dandy. And a wonderful little silk dress here. This one's a little worn, but it's really a great style and all original. And then she has various underwear, including little stays, and oh, here's a sweet little hat. I love that little hat. So wonderful early clothes with her in her little simple wooden case on that one. And then we have another beautiful example over here. This larger one has the initials that we've attributed it to Blampois, who did some of the early work in the glass eyes and deposed several systems about it. So those are 3 of the early good porcelain. But our cover girl, and here she is, our cover girl wearing, of course, a cameo, as appropriately she should. The Hooray, the beautiful Hooray doll, and someone called and asked me today, that Hooray that you're selling, what do you think of her? And I said, she has the face. And I think those of you who know Hooray will know exactly what I'm saying. Some of them are beautiful, but they just don't have the perfect look, the expression, and this one does. She's absolutely wonderful, and she is the swivel head variation, I will point out to you. She has, this is curious, and it's been this way, I'm not saying forever she would have had an original Hooray body. She now has a signed Hooray torso and legs, but she does have the Hooray gutta percha arms, which is interesting. So at some point, someone must have 150 years ago sent her for repair, and they didn't have the gutta percha, so they matched her up with a Romer body, which I always think is funny because Adelaide Hooray and Madame Romer were, well, let's just say this, they weren't friends. They had a lawsuit going against each other, and so, but here's a little girl who tried to bring peace to them by saying, all right, I'll take a Romer body and I'll be okay. So she is, look at her eyes. This is what you really want to always look at with the hoorays. You want that dreamy, dreamy look that's occasioned by having the very highly modeled upper eyelids. It almost looks like her eyes are about to close. That's just a great feature of them, and she is rightfully the covered girl of this auction. Now, other wonderful fashions we have, and there are many more, but I picked out some that I think have special features you should see. This particular one is great because she shares two different déposé systems in her making. During the 1860s, the French were deeply involved in different experimentation in the making of the doll. They had moved away from the rigid presentation of a doll that came with tacked on costumes that were not designed to be removed. Now suddenly the doll became a plaything. It was a beautiful woman, of course, in the case of poupées, to be admired, but it was also designed that you could buy different fashions for it. Fast forward to Barbie. That's what Barbie was. Barbie was not designed as much as for the doll as she was for having the kind of body that you could remove the clothes, put different clothes on. So it was with the French fashions of this period. So all type of bodies, head situations were being designed to make the doll more playable and more usable, even more so than having different facial models, which is why when you find a doll like this that has an exquisite portrait face, I mean stunning in every way and different, a different look and absolutely stunning, and then you have the unusual feature of her swivel head, which is designed to only swivel a certain degree, and that's why it was constructed that way. And that's based on the 1867 déposé system of Juliet. And then she has a body that was designed to be like hooray, but durable. And so who, of course, should design such a body but Clement? And why do I say Clement? Because the body was made of blown leather. And what else is made of leather that's stretched like that? Shoes. So who could make a body like this but a shoemaker, of course, and that was the background of Clement. And he made and designed his blown leather body, and he patented it in 1867, the same year that Joliet deposed the system for pivoting of the heads. So this doll has the rare Joliet head system, the rare Clement body, and a gorgeous portrait face. She has everything going for her. This doll is one in a million. She's a knockout. Very, very different. Now I chose this doll to show you because I think she is classic poupée. She is just a classic example of a beautiful face. Likely it is Pierre-François Gemot, and it has the Simone label on it, which means it was sold in the boutique of Françoise Simone, Maison Simone in Paris, considered the top French doll shop for only luxury type of dolls and toys and playthings, and rightfully so. Look at her costume. The doll is just like virtually mint in every way. This body is so firm, so perfect, and she's wearing my favorite, a fitted white piqué gown, all right, with wonderful ruffle, a pleated ruffle with little cut work, hand done cut work detail, handmade rickrack edging it. Look at that bustle in the back. The jacket just fits so snug, so perfectly. She has her jewelry, she has her lorgnette, she has her little lorgnette with the watch chain. She has these wonderful blue shoes. Look at that. Aren't they wonderful? She has beautiful bonnet. This is people's classic idea of a poupée, and she's rightfully deserving of it. She either belongs in an existing top collection, or this is your beginning to an existing top poupée collection. Now, if you wanted to stick with poupée and get her a little sister, you could get this mini version of a poupée. And as I've said to you, and those of you who've collected them a long time know, the small versions of the poupées are really hard to find. It's unusual because in this collection we have several examples, and sometimes we could go for months and not see a small one come in. But here's a little 12-inch one, and look at her. Again, my favorite embroidery, soutache. We just love even saying soutache. Look at this thing, it's just crusted with this very laborious hand embroidery in soutache. She's holding a little game of 7 pins, hand carved 7 pins. Look at her bonnet at the back. She's coming around now. Oh, what a face. Original wig, fabulous style. Just a fabulous style. Little earrings. And then we have another, a beautiful girl attributed to Pierre-Francois Gemot. Very, very distinctive face, a very beautiful costume. I kind of studied the costume. It's definitely vintage fabric. It might be reconstructed from another costume. Let me show you from a larger costume. I'm just not terribly sure. But this is the lining. So it was fully lined originally. But it's just stunning the way it's made. And look at her bonnet. And I'm going to turn it around now so you can see the back of her hair and see what a beautiful wig she has. I love it when they have the existing ringlet curls still there. And this demi-train, beautiful. And then I saved this wonderful girl for you for last because she has this 2-page story. This is little Hattie. She has a 2-page story that goes with her. She has this, she's little Hattie Appleton. She was a childhood doll of Harriet Appleton of Beacon Hill, Boston, and Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. And as nearly as I can go working through here, little Hattie acquired this once she was grown and went to Paris on her honeymoon. She actually had a young man she was courting that the family didn't really approve of because he was kind of a very handsome and swashbuckling, boastful, and perhaps an eye for a wealthy young heiress, and the family didn't approve of that, but they did let her marry him. After the Civil War, he came back from the war wounded, and they allowed him to marry him after warning her, you're becoming a little wild and making your horse wild too. So then, this is the part I like. She had a letter when she went to New York, and then she had a letter from her mother reminding her that proper young girls did not dance the waltz, man's arms around a girl's waist, and she should refrain from such in the future. All right, so meanwhile, this boyfriend, the swashbuckler, the fortune hunter, joined the 1st Massachusetts Cavalry and went off to fight in the Civil War. He wrote many letters home to Hattie, but none survive that indicate love or missing her. Perhaps it was the repressed Victorian attitude, or perhaps he was not in love with her. But anyway, in 1863, he was sent home, and the next November, he and Hattie got married, so we don't know how that romance, what happened. He never worked or did much in the way of occupation. He became a gentleman of leisure, and wait, get this, and proceeded to sire 12 children, 5 girls and 5 boys. 10 of which lived, 5 girls and 5 boys. So he learned of waterfront land for sale, and he purchased 65 acres for just under $10,000. He built a large stone house and moved his family there for about 3/4 of the year. They continued to winter in Boston. But here's the part. The children remembered their father as needing to be left alone in a darkened room. They were not allowed to slam doors. Now the vast fortune is gone, and the remaining family member from whom I purchased this doll, this is the collector who had the doll that wrote this, from whom I purchased this doll, struggles to pay the huge taxes on the breathtaking seaside property. So it's kind of interesting. We sat sipping coffee from chipped Chinese Portland cups on a sunny September morning in 1984, which is when the collector purchased this doll all those years ago. That's half a century ago, too. The overgrown gardens tumbled, and having met this fascinating lady and have been allowed to play and have been allowed to be custodian of little Hattie. So this story goes with her, with this doll, and that's a wonderful provenance and story to have with the fashion doll. Lots of fashion, wonderful fashion dolls in this auction. As you know, I love provenance. I love backgrounds of dolls whenever we can have them, and I urge all of you to try to keep the stories with your dolls if you can.